Every morning began with a quiet emergency. The fire was dying. Before dawn, in a farmhouse cold enough to see your breath, someone had to coax last night's banked coals back to life before the family could eat, wash, or heat a single drop of water. In the early 1930s, 9 out of 10 rural American homes had no electricity, and reviving that stove was only the first demand of a day that never let up. The kitchen sits in darkness, chilled and silent except for the faint tick of a wind-up clock. A practiced hand reaches for the coal rake, careful not to spill the ash that has blanketed the stove's heart overnight. The first step is always the same. Sweep aside the grey powder to reveal any glow left from last night's fire. If the banking was done right, a few red coals still pulse under the surface. With a gentle nudge, those coals are gathered into a pile near the draft. Kindling, splinters of dry hickory or oak, saved from yesterday's woodpile, are stacked in a loose teepee over the embers. A twist of paper, a steady breath, and the coals begin to crackle. Sometimes, if the coals are stubborn or the air is damp, the bellows comes out, delivering a few sharp puffs to coax the first flame. The housewife, often the first awake, moves with quiet efficiency. Her fingers know the tools by touch. The iron poker for stirring, the damper lever to open the draft, the heavy stove lid lifted just enough to slip in a small log. Within 5 minutes, the stove's iron belly is alive again, radiating warmth and throwing shadows across the kitchen floor. The fire must be steady, not roaring, too hot and the wood is wasted, too cool and breakfast will be late. In WPA interviews, farm women describe this daily ritual as both a necessity and a skill, learned by watching their own mothers work the stove in the pre-dawn dark. Once the fire is burning, a kettle of water is placed on the hottest spot. The heat from those few glowing coals, now fanned into life, is enough to drive away the night's chill and begin the day's work. The kitchen fills with the scent of wood smoke and the promise of warmth, a silent signal that the household is waking up and the day's labor can begin. A child in boots steps out into the morning, a tin bucket swinging from one hand. The well stands a short walk from the kitchen door, its pump cold and stiff in the early air. One strong pull, then another, and water splashes into the pail, echoing in the quiet yard. Each bucket holds just 2 or 3 gallons, enough to feel heavy by the time the walk back is done. For a family of 6, the morning's need totals 30 to 40 gallons. That means at least 10 trips, sometimes more if animals are thirsty or the day's chores run long. It's often the youngest who make these journeys, arms straining, fingers chilled by the metal handle. Sometimes a yoke helps balance 2 buckets at once, but for most children it's one at a time, careful not to spill. The path between the pump and the porch grows muddy with each pass, a line traced by small footprints and the occasional slosh of water. Every kettle boiled for breakfast, every wash basin filled, starts with these repeated efforts. On Mondays, when laundry waits in a mountain by the stove, the burden grows. Filling the copper boiler for wash day demands 15 or 20 buckets. It means an extra hour of hauling, an extra ache in young shoulders. The stove, now hot from the morning's fire, will eat through 30 to 60 pounds of wood just to bring the water to a boil. By the time the last bucket is emptied, the child's arms tremble with fatigue, but the kitchen is ready, water for cooking, cleaning, and the long, steamy business of laundry. Only then can the day's real work begin, fueled by muscle and the memory of cold well water drawn at dawn. With the kitchen fire blazing and the first buckets of water set aside, the day's outdoor work began in earnest. Sunlight, not the clock, decided the pace. Adults and older children moved quickly. There was only so much time before dusk would call them back indoors. In the barn, milking started early. Each cow took about 9 minutes, and with several animals to tend, the morning milking stretched to half an hour or more. This was done twice a day, every day, regardless of weather. The sound of milk streaming into tin pails mixed with the low shuffle of hooves and the steady rhythm of hands at work. Out in the fields, horses were harnessed to the plough as soon as there was enough light to see the furrows. A team could work for 4 to 6 hours before the sun grew too high and the midday heat slowed both man and animal. Timekeeping relied on the wind-up clock on the kitchen shelf or the angle of the sun above the barn roof. If the clock stopped, chores still marched on. Feeding, mucking and tending to livestock all had to be finished before the light faded. Every task was a race against the day's slow approach to evening. By late afternoon, the urgency sharpened. There was no electric bulb to extend the workday. Any job left unfinished meant more to do tomorrow, and the risk of losing daylight could spoil a batch of milk or leave a field half-ploughed. As the shadows lengthened, families turned from the fields and barn to quieter indoor work, making the most of every sunlit hour. Preserving food without electricity meant constant vigilance and a knack for working with the seasons. In the afternoon, the focus shifted from harvesting and chores to safeguarding the family's larder against heat and spoilage. Perishable foods, milk, butter, meat, couldn't wait for cool weather or a trip to town. Instead, they were stored in springhouses built over flowing water or in root cellars dug deep beneath the house where the earth stayed cool even in July. A springhouse with its stone walls and trickling stream kept crocks of cream and jars of pickles safe from the sun. But a sudden warm spell could send temperatures climbing, threatening to turn a week's worth of butter or a batch of sausage in a single afternoon. To beat the summer heat, neighbors came together each winter to harvest ice from frozen ponds and lakes. Men and boys sawed thick blocks, sometimes 2 feet square, and hauled them by sled to the ice house. There, each block was packed in sawdust, layer upon layer, to slow the melt. A well-built ice house could keep its cargo solid until September. When the mercury rose or a thaw came early, families watched the ice nervously, knowing that a few warm days could mean spoiled milk, wasted meat, and hungry mouths. Stories from farm diaries tell of frantic afternoons spent moving food, patching leaks in the ice house roof, or borrowing a neighbor's remaining block to save a barrel of cream. The memory of a lost ice supply lingered long after the summer heat faded, a reminder that every meal depended on last winter's hard work and a bit of luck with the weather. As dusk settled, the housewife turned her attention to the ledger, pencil poised over a page that tracked every penny spent on keeping the home lit after sunset. Kerosene, at $1 or $2 each month, and candles, another 50 cents to $1, together could swallow up more than 1/10 of the family's cash income. Even a careful household might burn through 7 gallons of lamp oil over 30 days, each drop measured out with an eye toward the end of the month. The glow from a single lamp barely reached the corners of the kitchen, so families gathered close, pooling their evening tasks in the same small pool of light. Mending, reading, and shelling beans all happened within arm's reach of the stove, while the rest of the house faded into shadow. Children learned to read by lamplight or fire, and adults rationed the wick, snuffing it early if money ran tight. Every evening, the budget for light shaped how long the family lingered together before bed, and how much of the night was spent in darkness, waiting for dawn. Winter on the farm meant cold bedrooms and breath visible in the morning air. A single stove could not reach the far rooms, so families turned to heated bricks or stones, wrapped in cloth and slipped under the covers. Some used metal bed warmers, shallow pans filled with hot coals, carried from bed to bed. The warmth was brief, fading long before dawn. For years, this was the nightly ritual, even as the outside world sped ahead. In the early 1930s, only about 1 in 10 rural homes had electricity. Most still rationed kerosene and wood, stretching every resource through the long nights. That changed in 1935, when the Rural Electrification Administration began running wires across fields and over hills. Neighbors formed co-ops, working together to bring power to their farms. The first night the switch was thrown, families gathered in kitchens, waiting. Someone pulled the chain on a single bulb. Light flooded the room, steady, bright, almost unreal. One woman called it the sun come inside. The old bed warmer sat unused as the family lingered in the new electric dawn. Electricity changed everything, but it also erased the quiet economy of effort that shaped each hour. Today, convenience hides the true cost of comfort. The lessons of patience, thrift, and shared work still matter, especially as we face new questions about energy and how we choose to live. Thanks for watching.